Good morning traders, welcome to the RMD Weekly Market Overview. I want to start this week by giving a big shout out to our subscriber base that has now reached an incredible milestone of 500 subscribers. We want to thank each and every one of you and remind you that it is because of you that we take the time each and every week to analyze and present potential trading opportunities to help you succeed and become a more successful trader. I'm going to let the disclaimer roll and I'll see you in the charts. We start the week with the US dollar to South African rand. Price managed to stay above 16 rand 55 and even briefly hitting our target set at 17 rand last week. Price is mostly still consolidating between the upper diagonal as well as the lower diagonal, with a breakout or any bullish price action above our weekly pivot at 1677. And that will clear the way to get a stronger close above this 4-hour 100 SMA, which of course could then help it to clear the upper diagonal, which will take us towards R1 weekly pivot at 16 Rand 98. And if we manage to clear that, we can probably expect anything from the 4-hour 200 SMA to our monthly pivot at 1708. So this entire area would be an area of resistance if we see a breakout, as this would be the top of the consolidation area and our target. If we do see a bearish price action below our weekly pivot, it's very likely that we will see another retest of this lower diagonal. And of course, this would probably act as initial support. However, if we see any close, or even if we see some price action below it, it's very likely that we will again retest this major area of support at 1655, and that is quite a few different areas of support, including the 200 daily SMA, the weekly S1 pivot at 1654, and then of course the big one, the yearly R2 at 1655. Should we close below that, the area to look out for would be the monthly S1 pivot at 1640. Moving on to the Euro USD, the area to watch for price action this week would be this confluence area at around 1.184. This is where we see the 4-hour 100 as well as the 4-hour 200 SMAs meet with the weekly pivot, all at this 1.184 level. Bearish price action will likely see the lower diagonal being tested near this weekly S1 pivot at 1.175, whereas any bullish price action from this area will likely see the upper diagonal being tested near our monthly pivot level at 1.187. If we do manage to see a break above this diagonal or any bullish price action above this monthly pivot, it's likely that we'll see our weekly R1 pivot being tested at 1.192, followed by our weekly R2 pivot at 1.2, and that will then of course be our second bullish target. If we see bearish price action or rejection from this level, we will likely see our weekly S1 pivot being tested, which coincides, as I've mentioned, with our lower diagonal. And if we see a break below that, it's likely that we will see price move much lower towards last month's pivot at 1.162, and that would be the blue line over here. Just a brief look at the economic calendar for the week. We can see that no major impact events expected for today. On Tuesday, we just have a few medium impact events, nothing major. On Wednesday, we have core retail sales and also some Federal Open Market Committee meetings later the evening. On Thursday, quite a few high impact events, mostly affecting the Australian dollar and the GBP. A few medium impact events later on Thursday, unemployment claims. And on Friday, we have some retail sales affecting the GBP, and then some index figures on later the evening on Fridays. Moving on to the GBPUSD, last week saw price break below our bullish channel, and that broke our 4-hour 100 SMA as well as our 4-hour 200 SMA. That quickly took price quite a bit lower, with price currently very oversold. However, considering momentum, it's likely that we will see another move lower, perhaps to this 1.271 level. If I'm not mistaken, that would be last pivot level. And of course, there's also the distinct possibility that we move even lower towards this weekly S1 pivot at 1.262. I'm also expecting a correction move towards 1.310. That would be close to our monthly S1 pivot. But for that to happen, we'll need to at least breach this diagonal resistance. And of course, also this monthly S2 pivot level at 1.283. Moving on to the Australian dollar USD. As expected from last week's bearish price action below our monthly pivot, we did indeed see price retest this lower diagonal and also got then rejected by this 4-hour 200 SMA, taking us back towards the monthly pivot where we closed on Friday. Price is still trading in this bullish channel with the higher and lower diagonals still the areas to keep an eye out for. I believe it's worth keeping an eye out for any price action between our weekly pivot and monthly pivot levels around this 0.728 level. If we manage to see bullish price action from this level, it's likely that we will retest this upper diagonal, whereas any bearish price action, especially below our weekly pivot and this 4-hour 100 SMA, will probably take us lower towards our bottom diagonal or lower diagonal, and also this 4-hour 200 SMA. And if we break below this, the first area to look out for some support would be the monthly S1 pivot at 0.717. And if that breaks, the next level to keep an eye out for would be the major horizontal support at 0.715. That would be this blue line over here. Looking now at the US 100, also known as the NASDAQ. And as we expected, and also mentioned in last week's video, we did see another retest of this major horizontal support at 11,050. So this is a very important level, as any close below it will target our weekly S1 pivot at 10,810. And of course, if that fails, target would be our monthly S2 pivot at 10,391. Considering some bullish scenarios where we manage to hold onto this level, the first area to watch out for would be our weekly pivot at 11,200. And that would be followed by what would likely be the 4-hour 200 SMA near this top diagonal, and probably also meeting up with our weekly R1 pivot at 11,460. If we break above that, we can test anything between 11,550 to our monthly pivot at 11,700. But it's also worth considering that it's possible that we will just consolidate and fill this flat bottom triangle with more consolidation around our weekly pivot. In other words, price coming back up to retest the top of the diagonal and then perhaps moving back down to retest our major support, then heading back to the weekly pivot. So that's what I'm saying. Important area to keep an eye on would be this weekly pivot, as that would help indicate a direction. Looking now at Brent crude oil. Brent crude continued to sell off last week, with price consolidating into another flat bottom triangle pattern. And that happened near our ultimate bearish target that we set last week at $39.90. And although this price target was expected, we did not foresee it to be hit this soon, just showing the veracity of the markets lately. For this reason, we would not put it beyond Brent crude to sell off even further to the monthly S3 pivot at $37.80 should we close below this $39.90 area of support. I'll just quickly move to the daily time frame so that you can see where that target would be. So of course, should we now close should we see a close below this $39.90 area, which would also coincide with a close below our daily 100 SMA, we would expect price to move lower towards this $37.80 level. So I'm just moving back to the 4-hour. Also, in the scenario where we see a correction and manage to close above the weekly pivot, firstly at $40.75, I think we will probably see $41.40 being our monthly S2 pivot being tested, and perhaps even the yearly S2 pivot at $42, also coinciding with this 4-hour 50 SMA. Now looking at gold. Gold managing to hold on to this area of support at 1920, even managing to break higher above this 1940 level, which now becomes our interim area of support. We can see that we also had an attempt at this 4-hour 200 SMA, which quickly got rejected, and price closing right on this area of support. Also creating what does appear to be a small head and shoulders pattern, and then of course should price not find additional support from this level, this head and shoulders could play out, taking us back towards our support area between 1915 and 1920. And of course, should that level break, it's possible that we will see the next major level of support being tested at the monthly S1 pivot at 1860. So actually I have to zoom out quite a bit so you can see that level. So should we break below our area of support over here, that is the next target for gold. However, and just give a moment for the chart to render again, if we manage to break higher and find some support and get above this 1950 level, I expect price to move higher towards our higher towards this 1977 level, which is the area of resistance. And to conclude our weekly market overview, we are looking at the daily chart of Bitcoin. Since the head and shoulders played out 2 weeks ago, we have seen price into what now appears to be a consolidation. And just looking at the positive of this, it appears that we are still trading in a bullish channel, keeping above our daily 100 SMA. And what we've mostly seen is just a correction of this previous move that we saw at the end of July. But yes, as long as we can stay above this area, and I'd say the area above 9,840, the trend will remain upwards. However, for the interim and for this week, it would be important to keep an eye out for this 100 SMA on the daily. The first target or overhead area of resistance would be our monthly pivot level at 10,650. Should we manage to clear that or see a decent close above it, I believe we will retest the lower or retest the neckline of this head and shoulders, which is at 11,120. And just looking at some bearish scenarios, should we close below our daily 100 SMA and reject this level, the first area to look out for would be support at 9,800, and that would be followed by the monthly S2 pivot at 9,640, and after that would be our 200 SMA on the daily, and that will probably be around the area of 9,100. It's also worth keeping in mind that the yearly pivot is all the way down here at 8,000. So in the event of a more aggressive sell-off, that is the levels of support to keep an eye out for. That concludes Bitcoin. I hope you found this week's video valuable, and I would like to remind you, and also all our viewers, to please subscribe and also to select the notification button in order to be reminded as soon as we make new content live. Also, to learn more about us, please visit some of our other videos or visit our website at www.rmdtrader.com. Until next time, this is John Jacobs for RMD Trader. Trade smart and trade successful.